That's right. I'm ready. Are you ready?
It's Sunday. I have to be ready. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to your favorite podcast, The Bedroom Super Producer. We are your hosts. My name is JT.
I'm BK.
And today we are going back to Hollywood. We're going to study who I think is probably the GOAT. Would you agree, BK?
I agree 100%, JT.
So listen, if you were born anywhere in the 80s, most likely your childhood memories revolve around this particular composer's music. Again, would you agree, BK?
I agree once again.
Is there any other composer in the world where you can just literally sing the three first notes of any of his themes and 80% of the people in the room will know exactly what movie that was from?
I think it takes an incredible composer for someone to give that feeling.
All right, so listen, right off the bat, let's try not to go over 3 hours to discuss this gentleman, because I know you and I both share a very deep admiration and passion for this guy's craft.
Yes, sir. And who are we talking about, JT?
We are talking about Johnny.
Johnny, Mr. John Williams.
Oh my God.
Indeed. Commonly known as the maestro in the inner circle in Hollywood. Don't you
I
agree?
didn't know that.
Yes, sir.
I mean, to me, this guy is just something completely different. It's a different breed altogether. I mean,
Well, he's like classically trained from way back in the days, before all those sample libraries that we were talking about off air. He's from another era, so he has a different approach than most composer and musician from today.
exactly. So he started out as a jazz pianist, I believe. Studied jazz piano.
Yeah.
And then I think he started out also in the Hollywood sphere as solely a piano player.
Indeed, as a musician, a basic musician. So pretty much his story begins in 1932 in New York, and started playing piano. And after he did his Air Force service, went to the renowned school of Juilliard in 1955. So pretty impressive training, this Juilliard school. And then became a studio musician and also played in jazz clubs in New York. And then came to LA and played in the Columbia Orchestra in Hollywood for a couple of years.
So when did he move to the West Coast?
I think he was born in New York, moved to the West Coast with his family when he was younger, like around maybe in 1940, 45, 1950 or something like that. Then joined the Air Force, and after the Air Force went back to New York to study in Juilliard in 1955.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then after school, moved back to Los Angeles to play in that big Columbia Orchestra.
And I think that one of the very interesting parts of his story, if you will, is the fact that he really started at the bottom of the ladder.
Yeah, exactly.
And as we said, he started out as a piano player, and surely after a while, I don't know if it was the composer or the conductor, but he was given little pieces here and there to score for shows or movies.
Yeah.
And very quickly, this particular person or even the teams started to realize just how talented the guy was.
Mm-hmm. So he started to write, I think, little bits of scores of like missing composition here and there because they were very busy in his schedule, and the the composer didn't have time to do everything, so he would give John little bits to do. And as he recalls, I think in an interview on YouTube, he says that he did one. It seemed to be okay with the composer, and then he did another one, and then it was two for the next week, and then it was three for the 2 weeks later. So I think that's how he slowly but surely got his hand into composing for the whole orchestra, and to like get to where he is today. So it didn't just, people think that sometimes these things just happen overnight, and it didn't happen overnight. He was, even when he was in the army, he would play with a small jazz band, and he would write for the band, like for him on piano and for some brass and some trumpets. So he started a little bit there, then school, then with the Columbia Orchestra, did a little bit. Like he could basically play those soundtracks that he was playing for those movies, and he could like learn at the same time and see how the composer was doing it, what type of techniques he was using, while like kind of a fly on the wall, and you get to play all those things and to get an idea of how to do it yourself. And then he started little by little doing it himself. So it wasn't instantaneous, and it wasn't like an overnight success. It was slowly through the years, learning from people, going to school, doing it a little bit by himself, and slowly to get to where he is today.
Well, I find two things very fascinating, and I think that it could go a long way to help our listeners, BK. First, like you said, um, Williams shows us a way to just see the music for what it is. Because in today's world, we tend to rely a lot on tools, and we were just talking about that off air. And we often think that because we'll get better plugins, better libraries, that our music's going to get better. But if you look at a guy like John Williams, who still writes on with pen and paper, you can see that at the end of the day, we all need to train ourselves in composition, harmony, orchestration, maybe even, or arranging. And this guy is the perfect example because he never sat in front of a computer.
Yeah.
And so the second thing that I gather from his career is the fact that, because you'll hear beginner composers ask questions such as, how do I get into video game music, or how do I score music for a movie? And when you look at the master, John Williams, well, he didn't start there. He didn't just do the big feature film right at the beginning. He earned his chops really slowly and progressively, and over a span of, like, I don't know, 60 years or something.
To get to his first movie, or like his first like
Well,
little.
to get to being the name that he has now. You know what I mean?
Well, he's like, mainly I see his start like composing for orchestra. It was mostly for TV, so it was around probably the 60s, the 70s, the 60s. He started mostly on for TV, so it was pretty much like almost 30, 35 years. Like he was 30, 35 years old before he started really composing for the orchestra. Like him
So
as
just
a,
to get in the game.
yeah, like as a, like the composer John Williams. So, and even that, it's like, it's not the big times. It's not like a big Hollywood feature. It's
Yeah.
like it's TV movies and TV series.
So his first, I guess, was an Oscar, was for Fiddler on the Roof, was in 71.
Something like that, I think.
So he would be close to 40.
Exactly.
He was born in 1932 or 36. What?
32.
Right. So basically 40 years old, to make it an easy number to remember. So that's, that again goes to show you that building great relationships and being an agreeable person when doing your business dealings around music is just as much important as, just having the talent and working on your craft.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that was my point. And let's talk about a bit of just how special his career has been. So 100 films to this day in 2020, 52 Oscar nominations.
Well, that's the second. He's second on the list. I think the number one is Walt Disney.
Right. So that's just out of this world when you think about the fact that he's just quote unquote the composer, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So pretty impressive indeed.
Yeah. Other achievements, he's got 5 Oscars.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. 4 of those everybody knows. I mean, Fiddler on the Roof, I personally haven't heard the score. I'll have to go back, but Jaws, E.T., Star Wars, and Schindler's List more recently.
Mm.
And on top of that, he's got also 22 Grammys. So just try to wrap your head around that. It's just insane, really.
Incredibly prolific for one guy.
And so again, it goes to show you that consistency and, I'd say durability almost, writing over 60 years of quality music, because he said himself that hard work doesn't pay off. It's hard work over a long period of time. Being consistent,
yeah, exactly,
is what brings you success at the end of the day.
Yeah, I saw an interview and he was saying that even when he doesn't feel like it, he considers he has to write something every day. Like write something 6.5 days every week, and you can be successful. So he always tries to write a little something every day, even if it's not good, even if he throws it away, even if he never plays it ever again. Just keep writing. I think it's kind of like writing a book. Everyone thinks that you write it like Mozart and a one-shot deal and everything is good, but it's not true. You just have to write those 2-3 pages every day. If it's good, it's good. You keep it. If it's not, throw it away. Just keep hammering at it. I think John Williams is a perfect example with all he's done, with everything he's scored. Like that, doing it every day is the key, is the way to go.
Yeah, I even read on some film scoring forum that that might not be true, but that he aims at 2 completed minutes of music per day.
Wow.
So that's insane when you think about it.
Well, it's like one song every day, full completed song every day.
So he's quite the workhorse.
I'm not sure that includes like full orchestral arrangement. I think it might be maybe the 2 minutes, the piano arrangements. I think that
for sure.
I think that might be it. I don't think it's like a full Mozart, boom, all the 40 musicians, everyone, because just writing that out, even when you know what you're writing, I think it can take like a day. So I think it's composing.
Well, I mean, it goes back to our the point we were trying to make about learning to just write music and understand the power of a good idea before trying to embellishing anything or getting caught up in arrangement, mixing,
exactly,
orchestration in his case. So it would make sense that it would only be piano sketches.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great segue to talk about something that's kind of tarnished his legacy a bit. And there's a lot of YouTube videos on that subject. And it is the fact that he was heavily influenced by a lot of more, let's just say, romantic composers, people such as Stravinsky, Holst, even Wagner, and
well, it's normal. Everyone listens to someone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in John Williams's case, there are literally passages that people will deem rip-offs. And how do you feel about that?
Everyone copies everyone. That's the way it is. And I think, as we said last week, there are only 12 notes to play with, and we've been playing these same 12 notes for the past 600, 700 years. So at some point, there's going to be overlap. For me, it's more of a like paying homage to these great composers. Of course, you listen to some Star Wars stuff and it sounds a little bit like Wagner, or you're you you listen to some colorful things like in Empire Strikes Back or something, and it sounds a little bit like Swan Lake from Tchaikovsky, or we've all noticed these things because we listen to these composers too. But I think he merges those styles in such a pleasing way, and it's tailored to the emotion that he tries to convey through a certain scene, that I don't see it as ripoff. I see it really as someone who realizes that this technique is fantastic and I should use it for this specific place in the movie. If, like, it's kind of like saying, I don't know, you ripped off a chord progression. Yeah, everyone rips off chord progression. There's not that many chord progression that sound good together. It's the arrangement, it's the intent, it's the emotion that you're trying to convey. So for me, it doesn't really matter. For you, does it?
Well, when I first saw those videos several years ago, I was kind of disgusted because he was my childhood hero for sure. Like, I mean, we talked about Quincy, but if I had to pick my favorite composer of all times, it would certainly be John Williams. And so when I heard those video comparisons of certain passages that are literally in the same key, the same arrangements and voicings and the woodwinds and you realize that for him, the way he plays the orchestra, or should I say the way he uses different sections of the orchestra, is kind of like us using presets in Serum. You know what I mean? Like, certain orchestration techniques that he'll take from other renowned composers is literally like ripping off, quote unquote, a certain sound designer, for example.
For me, it's normal. It's you have to get inspired in some sort of way. So if you're the first person playing drums, of course, in the next 20, 30 years, you're going to hear other people and you're going to say, oh, yeah, they're copying. They're copying. Oh, no, that money beat, he's copying. Well, it's, bass drum, snare, bass drum, snare. I mean, how can you say it's a copy? Oh, it's the same speed. Oh, he's playing at the same speed. He's copying, so it's a little bit difficult in music for me, if you have just little passages and little phrasing, for me, it's inspiration. If it's like 2 minutes of music that it's exactly the same thing and it's Carmina Burana or something from Karl Orff or something, fine. That's copying. But I don't know. I think these guys are a little bit too intelligent, a little bit too bright to consciously think that no one is going to notice. They know people are going to notice. They want people to notice. They did it. That's the way they intended it to be. So
yeah, you bring up a great point, because Williams himself said that when he wrote the first Star Wars movie, he saw it as kind of a family movie, and because it was already super action packed on the screen, he wanted to convey more of the human side of the story and the emotions. And he said in an interview that the only way to do that was to remind the audience of certain things sonically. So it goes to your point that he did it very, very consciously. And that's actually part of his genius, I guess.
He knows how to. I think the way he writes music is not just I want to write a brand new melody, a brand new theme. He writes in a way that he wants to make people feel a certain emotion at a certain scene or a certain passage in the movie or a certain cut. That's why he develops these very rich relationships with these Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, because he needs to know, what do you want to portray? What emotions do you want people to feel? And then he uses everything that he's learned in his whole life as a composer, and everything that he's heard, everything that he's studied, every orchestration maneuvers that he's learned from these big guys, these Stravinskys and Tchaikovskys and Wagner and Orff, and he says, what in my toolbox of all these different ideas and all these songs that I've heard and all these things that I've learned, what can I use to best represent the emotion that we're trying to portray in this scene for this specific movie? And then he uses it. That's the way I see it. That's his genius. That's why I think everyone recognizes themselves through it, because he finds a way to link you with that scene, the music, with the emotion that's supposed to be felt, and that's his genius. So I don't tend to look at it as, oh, he copied this, he copied that. Oh, these three notes are exactly the same three notes as here. As it's, I think it's kind of pointless to do that. It's like I said, it's the same 12 notes for the past 700 years. So of course there's going to be, on, I don't know how many sheets of music are written every year, of music or songs. Of course there's going to be overlap. Even if people don't talk to each other, statistically there's bound to be an overlap of like the same three notes at like the same tempos. Even tempos don't go all the way down to zero. You're like from 70, maybe 75, 80 usually the slowest, to maybe 130, 140 at the fastest. So it's a pretty limited range of tempo. So of course you're going to have overlap. And so for me, it doesn't take away anything from his genius just because he has three notes that sound like Tchaikovsky. And personally, I think he made it that way on purpose.
Perfectly explained, BK. I mean, it absolutely reconciles me with Williams. And just to close off on this topic, would you agree that it's a modern phenomena where people expect absolute and true originality from artists? Like, to me, it's become kind of an obsession now, where if I heard this snare sample somewhere else, or if I heard this preset for a synth lead, then you're just ripping off somebody else, and then you're not original, and your work therefore could just be dismissed. You know?
Well, I can understand why, because everyone's just trying to be original. At the same time, music comes from somewhere, and usually it comes from people who preceded you. It comes from the songs that you listened to when you were little, like right now. It comes from the song that you learned to play when you learned to play your instrument or whatever. It comes from the songs that you tried to emulate when you learned about arrangements and everything. So you can be totally like unique. And if people wanted to be so unique, why don't we have 17-minute songs? That's unique. Why don't no? But seriously, why don't we have 30-second songs, and that's it? People stay with the whole verse chorus, verse chorus, verse chorus. You're like, well, that's not very original if you think about it that way. But in a way, it's the way that we like listening to music. It's a certain type that, so there's still a formula to all this. So I think it's kind of pointless to always try to have either always new sounds, always be like the first one to do something, and at the same time, I think if you're the first one to do something, you're it it doesn't always gel. People don't get it. It usually takes like 20 years for people to get it, and it usually takes 20 years that like a couple of people copy that sound, that very avant-garde sound, and then people start to understand that that music was really good, or that type of painting was very good. So I think it's kind of a pointless discussion. At the same time, we don't want to be always there's a thin line between copying music and being inspired by music or by certain sound.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, even then, for people like the masses to recognize these musical prowesses, you'll need some music major who works at Vox that's gonna do like a 15-minute YouTube video to actually explain why that was so uh, inspirational and incidental to create, you know, a legion of other composers who are gonna follow in these footsteps and yada yada. So you made a very good point earlier about how Williams ties in together all these little, shall we call them movements almost, or cues. And I think that's just a really fascinating aspect of his work is the how he'll go from, let's take for example the Last Jedi and the combat scenes where 30 seconds of hardcore brutal brass will be followed by very very subtle flutes and woodwinds, and he'll go back to bombastic um action cue music, if you will, and he does it seamlessly and effortlessly, and that's one thing that I find absolutely fascinating with his work.
Mm. Um, First of all, we have to say that John Williams wrote the music for Star Wars, in case no one knew that already. And right now we're talking about The Return of the Jedi, the third movie of the initial series. Um, what's interesting in what you just said is that he always tries to strike a balance between the scene and also, I think, the emotional relationship between the characters. And I think in Return of the Jedi, that's a perfect example that he wants to represent that struggle between, let's say, Darth Vader and Luke, that battle scene, action scenes, and those big punches in terms of orchestral maneuvers. But at the same time, he still wants to represent that um, the good side, the bad side. And that's why in most of his movies, especially Star Wars, each important characters, they always have their theme. Okay, Luke Skywalker has a theme. Darth Vader also has a theme. Of course, their theme are not going to be uh, very common. You got on one side, you got the hero theme, a more like playful theme, a more hopeful theme, and on the Darth Vader side, it's gonna be something way more dark and like something more like marching, like very soldier, very imperial, very like big brass and like big tums and very almost very Orff style, Karl Orff style, like Carmina Burana. It's very like soldier like. And John Williams finds a way with all his tools to link all those things together. And even in scenes that the characters are together at the same moment, you can see the push and the pull between the dark side and like the good side of the force. And it's very interesting to have a composer with that level of details who understands what the director wants to represent on screen and almost tailors to the instrument level to be at the service of what you see on the screen.
Absolutely. Just quick correction. I was really talking about The Last Jedi, which is the last of the Star Wars
Ah,
franchise that was scored by uh, Johnny.
okay.
But you're
I
right
thought you were
that
talking about the Return of the Jedi.
well, I mean, they're all one and the same in the fact that he always has this like musical lexicon that he'll go back to, as you said. So certain instruments might be deemed more feminine. Therefore, he'll have people like Princess Leia or Padme, or more recently, what's the scavenger's name?
Ray.
Ray, exactly. My bad. And then, like you said, the bad guys will have huge brass and big, taiko drums and timpanis and all that. But I think that one thing that no other composer really brings to the table is one, like you said, incredible melodies. Two, like the ebb and flow of these cues interlinking between one another, and how that creates tension and ultimately climax and resolution. And sometimes we tend, like more modern composers, go right to the climax. It's all climax. If you look at the Avengers movie, and no knock on Brian Tyler, who I think is absolutely incredible, but it's like there's no, we tell you what the emotion is instead of letting you come to your own emotional conclusion about what's happening in the scene.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. He does it in such a subtle way because he has he masters the use of like the whole orchestra, and like you said, the woodwind for something very specific. But he does it very subtly to mark different little things. And he's really all about, like you said, he's not about what happens at point B. Like you're at point A, you want to go to point B. He's not about that big explosion at point B. He's really about the whole journey A between B, and he leads you to it in such a almost like a fairy tale-ish way, with the woodwinds that tell you where to go and how you should feel at certain places. And that's what I find very incredible about what he does. And he usually does it in, he uses silence in such an incredible way, I find, because he leads you down to feel that specific emotion or to have that bang. And sometimes the bang is the absence of anything, and you find it weird. And the fact that there's a little hole there, an absence of music, that's what like grabs your attention at some specific things, and or you expect that something's gonna happen. He does that in like many movies. He does that in Star Wars. He does that in Jaws a lot, because there's a special theme for the shark in Jaws, that it's always when the shark is coming, there's a special theme. And at other places, he removes it, like to create really like an absence of music, just to have that impact when the shark appears. And he doesn't use it all often, like maybe once or twice in the movie. There's not the theme. Usually there's the theme, and you know the shark is coming, something's going to happen. And sometimes he removes it to have that special surprise or something. And he's one of those composers that he's not afraid to ask the director and to go through the whole movie and say, okay, there's going to be music here, there's going to be music here, no music here, no music here. And he's not afraid not to have music at particular spots in the movie. That for me is incredible, because usually as a composer, you want to put music everywhere. And he wants to know, no, this doesn't require music. I don't need to put music there. And that for me is an incredible like insight into his character and the way he writes music.
Yeah. And to your point of learning how to enhance certain scenes with either the presence or absence of music, what I find incredible in John Williams's work is his knowledge of where music should reside in terms of frequencies. And he was saying in an interview that his greatest enemy are the sound effects. And he always thinks in terms of the sound effects. So if there are going to be like some super high-pitched sound effects, he'll probably write more, low strings, for example. Or if there's dialogue, he'll probably not use, woodwinds, because they're in the same register.
Yeah, as the voice. Yeah.
So he's really a tool to the story more, and even through all of those hurdles, he made the most memorable themes Hollywood movies have ever had, really.
And which one is that? Because for me, there's so many good themes. Like for me, one of those memorable themes, like for me, the top memorable aside from Star Wars, I'm gonna say Schindler's List. That the violin part in Schindler's List
Absolutely.
is really awesome, and of course, E.T. For me, those are like there's something. There's just a couple of notes, but it's fantastic. What did you have in mind?
Well, okay, so obviously what made him famous and like kind of a blockbuster name was obviously Jaws with the two notes. Ta-na. Um,
And at first, that Spielberg thought it was a joke.
yeah,
Like
he
when
did say
he
that.
showed it to him, he was like, "Ah, ha, ha, fine, you're funny." But he said, "No, that's it. That's it."
I mean, it's such a memorable theme. It's just, but if
But you have to arrange it in a certain way. It's not just da da. It goes up in terms of intensity. Sometimes it's slower. Sometimes it's faster. There's like you're playing. You're playing it. It's kind of like playing one note on the guitar. There's a way to play one note on the guitar. It's not just one note.
yeah, and I mean, as the theme develops, he has some very intricate, horn lines.
Yeah.
Da-da-da,
Yeah.
da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And but if you want to know what my personal favorites are, and I guess that's your question. Um, you mentioned the flying theme from E.T.
Yeah.
That's probably my all-time favorite, just because of the orchestration, the way the woodwinds swirl. You really, and again, it goes back to why did they call it the flying theme? It's because there's a guy on his BMX with an alien in the basket in front, and they're flying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you listen to the music, and you're not going to think of anything else. Really, it goes up and down, and it's really lush in the instrumentation, the strings and the woodwinds particularly. And obviously, there he also has this incredibly memorable horn line, which is kind of one of his trademarks. But obviously, Schindler's List always has me tearing up.
Yeah.
Tearing up. Yeah, it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous piece of music, and it also goes a bit away or from the whole fanfare sound that made him famous
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
movies such as Star Wars, the whole Indiana Jones franchise.
Mm.
And that's a great segue to tell you my second favorite of all time, and that would be Superman.
Oh yeah, the old Superman, the 1978 Superman.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah.
the OG.
Yeah. The OG. Yeah.
And I mean, and that's something that I really admire from Williams is his orchestration for horns and Superman, and even the Olympics theme. I think it's 1980 something.
84. Los Angeles was in
The
84.
LA ones.
LA ones were
Yeah,
that was the one. If it's the LA
well,
ones,
that would make sense since he's American and the broadcast would have been American.
if it's Los Angeles, that means it's 84. The one that
But I mean,
the one that Michael played at, and that there was a guy on the jetpack and everything. Yeah, that's 84.
I mean, just the complexity and the richness and nobody really comes close to him when it comes to, I would say, brass and woodwinds. Nobody else makes such clever use of these orchestra sections.
He's really the master of like brass and woodwinds. He has this knack for it, I think.
Yeah.
And he usually uses those. It's very different than how people use it today. Usually they use these instruments, especially brass, like very attack and to like move air, to have that like that boom, that very like impactful thing. And he does it in total different ways. he usually uses mostly like brass and stuff like that just to have he plays the basic theme, like rhythmic, and he uses the woodwinds to have that kind of intricate, complex like lines. It's not the main melody, but it's like this intricate, complex flute or woodwind line that's gonna be like in the back that you're not gonna hear that much, but you hear it when it stops, and that's what he usually does. So it's not gonna cover the main theme or the main melody, but it gives you that fluffiness in the background. That's what I love about his woodwinds.
Yeah. How the woodwinds, especially the flutes, swirl in and
Exactly,
out
exactly.
to
He has
highlight the brass.
yeah, he has these like intricate or like arpeggiated things that he does with the flutes and the woodwinds and the hobos. It's like you could spend years studying those.
Yeah. Another instrument that he uses very well, and that you're certainly not going to hear a whole lot in a, say, Hans Zimmer score,
Hmm.
is the harp.
Oh yeah, the harp. Yep, yep.
The harp, again, a tool for orchestral composers to go in and out of certain chords, for example, or highlight and create, like I talked about, climax and then resolution.
Mm. But he uses it's once again he has another approach to all this. Today, when we think of harps and things like that, and even percussion and everything, today we think of rhythmic stuff. We think of like a drum beat or a hi hat or everything. He doesn't think of it that way. He leaves the rhythmic stuff to other instrument, be it violas, be it the brass and like stuff like that. And he uses mostly percussions and the harp and everything like that, just for these accent and to have like little fills here and there, and to when when you give the guys from the woodwinds like a breather when they have to breathe, and just to keep the attention of the person listening to it. So another thing like that's different. It's he doesn't use percussion as like straight percussion, like just 1, 2, 3, 4. He uses it as fills sometimes, and that's for me that's very interesting. It's another way of thinking about music, and every time I listen to John Williams, I think to myself, maybe I should use more of what he's doing into my stuff, like just to switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, of course. And to just parallel what you just said, let's think in terms of, a guitarist or a bassist, where they'll slide between frets and they'll have these little amarons just to embellish, a chord, for example. And Williams literally plays the orchestra like that,
Yeah, exactly. As if
swirling in and out of his chords or his motifs.
yeah, it's interesting. He plays the orchestra as if it was two or three instruments interacting together. That's what's fantastic. It's not just this note and this note and this note. He changes who he uses in the orchestra depending on like what level of sound does he want. If he wants it to be super loud or not so loud, or sometimes he switches it. If he wants to keep like a constant like pulse of at least like one or two instrument to keep the continuity of a track going. There's so much stuff that he does. Like I said, you could study this guy for years.
Yeah. Another aspect of his game that is really not talked about too much is his understanding of rhythm. Because if you listen to the Star Wars theme at the very beginning, it's actually very complex. The way the snares and the timpanis support these trombones and
Hmm.
brass instruments,
Yeah,
it's way more complex and subtle than I always see. Like if you listen to someone who's not a music nerd like us, and they'll sing the theme, they won't necessarily replicate those little tiny adjustments in the rhythm. But when you actually sit down and either look at the score or listen to the music, you can see that it's so complex
yeah,
and
especially
so intricate.
especially in terms of intensity and like like the emotion that you have to put in that, like that snare hit or that hit, that percussion hit. It's very intentional, and it's not something that's easy to do or easy to replicate. It sounds, for me, the like the Imperial March from Star Wars sounds a lot like a bolero, the Ravel.
Right.
It's very like the percussion stuff that keeps getting louder and louder and louder and louder as the song keeps going. It's kind of like that, but it doesn't go as far. But he uses that same principle, that same orchestration principle for those percussion to, like, he finds a way to always push you in a certain direction in the song. That's what I like about John. He pushes you in, like, in the soundtrack, and it's going in the same direction as in the movie, kind of like a Spielberg movie. A Spielberg movie has some sort of rhythm, and like usually John Williams finds a way to even to show you that rhythm. The cuts are made in a certain rhythm, and his music just falls exactly into place for that sort of those special cuts. And that, so in a way, a movie is kind of musical in a certain way, and then you have to add music to it to make it even more musical. So
Yeah, and I even heard him say in an interview that I guess it was Spielberg. Can't remember if it was Spielberg or Lucas, but he was saying that I think it was Spielberg. He was saying that there's a musical quality to the way he cuts his movies, and I think that's one of the things. And I was talking earlier about the Last Jedi. It goes to show you that modern movies are way more square in the way they put together the images. Back in the day, there were some dead moments where there's no action and there's dialogue or even no dialogue, and we're just letting you simmer down with the emotion that the storyteller is trying to convey.
yeah, to explain
And
certain scenes. And today it's very boom, boom, boom. Everything has to follow, and then we have to do this and we have to do that. And before, I think there was more of a like it was more like a normalcy of something more normal of the way you think about a problem. You don't have the solution always instantly. Sometimes you have to think about it. And you're right to say that today sometimes everything happens so fast. You're trying to squeeze as much things. It's as if people it's as if everyone has attention deficit disorders, and people, like the filmmakers, are afraid that people are going to find the movie boring if there's not enough explosions and not enough. I think that goes a little bit against true storytelling. So maybe it's,
yeah.
I don't know.
Unfortunately, my brain has reached like the point of no return with especially action movies today, where, like, for me, any Avengers movie is overwhelming. Like, I'm literally physically and mentally tired, especially when they get to the final epic battle. That's where I just turn it off because I can't. It's just too much. There's too much to process, and when I'm watching a movie, I'm trying to internalize my favorite characters' emotions. I'm trying to listen to the music and study it, obviously, because we're music nerds, and then I'm also looking at the photography, the color grading. I'm trying to take it all in and appreciate it, and there's just no way.
Mm.
Like today, like
No, you have to.
Age of Ultron, especially, which is kind of like a battle scene, the whole movie it's just impossible to wrap your brain around because there's just too much going on at the same time.
Yeah, but they're made. You have to watch them like more than one time. It's that. First of all, they're very long movies. So if you have that much color, that much sound, the whole story, all those different characters, understanding how everything is linked together, so you have to watch it a couple of times. And there's no way for like a normal brain to understand all that. But like I said, I think it's the directors and the movie studios, they think that we're losing interest. There's
Yeah,
so much CGI today. There's so much effects and everything. So the next movie has to be even bigger, more explosions, more superheroes on the same scene. More, say, before it was Superman, one movie. Captain America, one movie. Spider-Man, one movie. Now it's Spider-Man, Iron Man, Superman, Thor, everyone at the same time. So I don't know. It'd be an interesting podcast subject for the future to see the evolution of music and big Hollywood blockbusters for the past 10 to 20 years.
for sure, for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
But if we were to go back to John Williams' classics, I think some movies that we haven't really mentioned, obviously, like there's the Indiana Jones
Yeah, Indiana Jones.
franchise that
Yeah.
could certainly be in there as
Yeah, the
the most
theme.
memorable themes.
Yeah, themes are especially since it's a combination of two themes.
Yes,
Like there's
indeed.
a main theme and then there's the bridge theme. And I think that initially I was watching an interview and John Williams said that he proposed the two themes separately, and that Spielberg liked them so much that he said, "Can't you find a way to have them both in the same thing?" And he found a way, and he put one in the bridge and one is the main part. Aside from that, of course, all the Star Wars, Close Encounter of the Third Kind. That was also something he did. We talked about E.T. We talked about
Incredible score.
yeah,
Close Encounter.
Close Encounter. That's
just
fantastic. We talked about Schindler's List. Also, one of my favorites, Jurassic Park. Beautiful, beautiful theme.
fun story about this one. Last year, Cho and I, we were Cho is one of our good friends. For people who don't know, we were going to the cabin, and as we got past the second gate, because our cabin, for the listeners out there, is a very, very remote, off the grid place where we have two lakeside cabins, and we go there to just unwind and be out of the cell phone tower airwaves. And so we had just gotten past the second gate, and lo and behold, the Jurassic Park theme comes on, and Cho was playing DJ in my car, and so we're rolling in the woods on a very rough path, and we just burst out laughing, both of us, because it was so much the perfect music soundtrack to nature that it was just like so fitting. And obviously the song came on random, but again, it goes to show that whatever is on the screen, the music will also say, is what I think.
And the perfect music to get attacked by a T-Rex too.
Yeah, I think that Jurassic Park also has two very, very memorable themes. I don't know if they play in the same cues, but there's also two themes that are very, very memorable.
He usually has a very good bridges that he uses back and forth, and you're absolutely right that John Williams really finds, like, to get back to what you were talking about Last Jedi earlier, he has this incredible way of using his past themes and reintroducing them when it's a movie later on, when it's part 2, part 3, part 4. And like you said, he has a way of linking everything. Like you said, in Last Jedi, there's music from The Return of the Jedi, there's music from the first Star Wars, there's music from The Empire Strikes Back, and he finds a way to use those themes in The Last Jedi while still introducing new pieces of music for different characters and for different situations and for the big openings parts and the big finishes. So very interesting. If we continue, also one of my favorites, Saving Private Ryan. That's also a soundtrack that's pretty awesome. And without forgetting Um, the Harry Potter movies also, I think the theme is so strong. Like the those little I don't know if you remember the like Hedwig's Flight. It's this
Yep.
little theme that's played on the Celeste, those little pianos. Dun, 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 dun. It's fantastically written. It's so yeah, Harry Potter movies. Aside from that, do you have any
And
others?
again,
There's
just
so many others, but
quickly before you we go to another movie. Oscar right now, my son and your godson is on a very very big Harry Potter binge. He's reading the all of the novels, and so he's been obsessed with Harry Potter lately. And what do you know? He sings the theme, the Edgewick theme, when he's playing with his Legos and stuff. So it's just incredible that his brain instantly associates these incredible themes with his current passion.
yeah, no,
Like
it's awesome.
it's kind of a magical, almost alchemical process
Mm.
that goes on when you. What else did he do that I really liked? Well, there's stuff that I didn't like, such as the JFK stuff.
Okay.
I thought that was just I maybe it's because the emotions in the movie are too complex, but I feel like I can't really wrap my head around or my heart around the music.
Mm.
Um,
I also
what
liked
else?
I liked Minority Report a lot.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
That's one of the
He
lost.
also did this old Peter Pan movie, which was really good. Hook.
Yeah, Hook. Yeah, there's a lot of cool themes in there too. Yeah.
Hook was really, really good. And then, I mean, the rest is just derivative, I guess, of his genius. Like for me, the I'm attracted to the themes. So, like the Luke Skywalker theme, I think is absolutely brilliant.
Mm. Like Leia's
The
theme also.
Leia
Yeah.
stuff, the Han and Leia theme is incredible.
Yeah. Yoda's theme
Um,
also is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, Yoda is
Mm.
incredible. But there's a lot of the movies that he did more recently where I guess the director didn't give him a chance to come up with um, more memorable themes.
Well, recently he did a lot of Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about Lincoln.
Like the posts and stuff like that.
Like the Terminal with the
Yeah, Terminal
was it,
Terminal.
Tom Hanks.
Yeah, Terminal was a bit boring. I didn't really like.
AI. Did you like that one?
I didn't really like.
I can't I can't remember. I
can't-
didn't like the movie, and I can't remember the music.
No,
So
AI. I've seen it, but I don't remember anything about it.
yeah,
So, but like he said himself, I did a lot of good things and a lot of not so good things. So I think it comes with when you've done so many movies, they can't all be Star Wars or they can't all be Indiana Jones.
they certainly cannot be. I'm just looking at real quick if we could point our listeners to some other incredible movies. I think that 7 Years in Tibet.
Yeah,
is
that's
also incredible.
that's one of my favorites with Yo-Yo Ma, an incredible cellist. So yeah,
Who also did Memoirs of a Geisha.
yeah, Memoirs of a Geisha also, but 7 Years in Tibet, I think that's something maybe one of those lost John Williams soundtrack that people don't know and they should discover. I think 7 Years in Tibet, that would be it.
Yeah, so listen, you have to open your Spotify or Apple podcast, Apple Music or YouTube, and you need to Google and YouTube this name, John Williams. There's way too much in his career to just talk about in an hour and some minutes long podcast. But I think that we both agree that there's so much to learn from listening to this guy's music. It's just even if you're a hip hop fan, you will learn stuff in there. Like that's the way I see it. You have to broaden your horizons and learn more whether it be, arrangement techniques, chord voicings. Melody is a very big one with John Williams. And then his way to, like we said, all throughout this podcast, the way he goes from different passages, the way he transitions between the climax and more of the tension parts of his cues,
Indeed. Or just to, I think even just to listen for the pleasure of feeling those emotions that you felt in the movie without watching the movie. I think just listening to his music for just the way he can make you feel things, I think is worth it.
Absolutely. And if there's a movie that's coming out soon, scored by John Williams, I strongly advise you to do what I did for The Force Awakens, and that's to listen to the score, because nowadays they'll put out the scores like a few weeks before the movie premieres. And I had done that with The Force Awakens. I had listened to the whole entire score at least 2-3 times before going to the movie. And when I watched the movie, I was so taken by the emotions of the different scenes because I knew the music. And that's a quite interesting experience. It's kind of like going to a concert and already knowing the songs that the artists are going to play. Like the ones obviously you're going to like better.
Exactly, indeed. And do we know any of his future projects or what he's going to be up to in the next couple of years?
I have to say I don't know. I had read somewhere that The Last Jedi would be his last Star Wars movie. I think no. Wait, he did Solo. Which one was done last? Was it Solo?
Solo was 2018.
But it's not
the rise of
he's not scoring.
Rise of Skywalker. Well, Solo wasn't really him. I think Solo was John Powell, right?
Yeah, but Powell just I think reused certain things.
Exactly. So it wasn't him exactly. It was mostly like John Powell. I think the last thing he really did was really the Rise of Skywalker.
Right. Which is the last of the newer trilogy.
Exactly,
right?
The last of the Star Wars. And I heard there were rumors that there was maybe a new Indiana Jones coming. Maybe. No,
really?
I'm not sure if it's... so we don't know.
So number 5?
Yeah, probably number 5. That's what I read
number
on
5. Wow.
a couple of blogs here and there, but nothing for sure. I don't know if it's already in pre-production or I don't know.
Hopefully it's better than the Crystal Skulls thing.
Well, at some point, remaking like 4, 5, 6, 7 different movies of almost the same story, you have to have a really good, like a good background story, at some point, these movies, you realize that usually 3 is usually the good number, 3 parts, and then you should close it out, because if you drag it on, it seems like you're just trying to rekindle something that was there, and that's something that sometimes is very obvious to the audience.
Well, I mean, there's also this weird mathematical law of nature that 3 is kind of everything.
Is the more stable. Yeah.
Oh, stable is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So take it away, BK. I mean, I think that we have told our audience how much we love love his work, and they will too if they take the time to go out there and do their own research on the guy.
Indeed, and the only advice I would say: rewatch those awesome movies, rewatch Indiana Jones, rewatch Star Wars, and just listen more to the music, and you're gonna see his genius right there in front of you.
Yep, there's nothing like a Spielberg-Williams combo on a gray Sunday.
Exactly. It's perfect. Well said.
All right, my brother, good talk.
All right, great talk.
See y'all next week.
See you all next week. Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. Remember to subscribe if you like what you hear. We're on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. Also, if you want to support us, head on to delicatebeast.com. You can find our serum packs, our contact instruments, and also plenty of freebies if you subscribe to the newsletter. Don't forget to follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and once again, keep making that awesome music.